My name is Elise Thornton. I'm 32 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I signed paperwork that made me the legal owner of 17 properties on Maple Ridge Lane, the street where I grew up, the street where my parents still live, the street where everything I thought I knew about family love came crashing down around me when I was 18 years old. The real estate agent thought I was crazy. She kept asking if I was sure, if I understood what I was doing, if I had really thought this through. 17 properties, she said, is a lot of responsibility, a lot of money, a lot of everything. I told her I had never been more sure of anything in my life. What I didn't tell her was that I wasn't buying real estate. I was buying closure. I was buying the right to finally say what I should have said a decade ago, to finally show my parents what their choice cost them and what it made me become. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you about the day my parents discovered that their least favorite daughter now owned their home, their neighbors' homes, and every property they could see from their front porch, I need to take you back to where this all began. Back to the summer I turned 18 when my parents sat me down at our kitchen table and told me that my college fund, the one my grandmother had started before I was born, the one I had watched grow for 18 years, the one that was supposed to be my ticket to the future, no longer existed. They had given it to my sister instead. Growing up as the older sister to Brooke Thornton was like growing up in someone else's shadow, except the shadow was made of sunshine and everyone preferred it to the actual light. Brooke was 3 years younger than me, but from the moment she was born, she became the center of our family's universe. I remember the exact moment I realized I was invisible. I was 7 years old, and I had just finished my first piano recital. I had practiced for months, gotten up early every morning, stayed after school for extra lessons. I played the piece perfectly, not a single mistake. My parents clapped politely when I finished, and my father checked his watch. 3 years later, Brooke decided she wanted to try gymnastics. She went to one class, did a somersault, and my parents talked about it for 6 months. They enrolled her in private lessons, bought her custom leotards, drove her to competitions 2 hours away. When she quit after a year because she got bored, they said it was fine, that she needed to explore her interests, that they were proud of her for trying. When I quit piano after 4 years because I wanted to focus on academics, my mother asked if I was sure I wanted to give up so easily. That was the pattern. Everything Brooke did was celebrated. Everything I did was expected. She was the star. I was the stage manager, always working behind the scenes, never quite making it into the spotlight. But I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself that Brooke needed more attention because she was younger, more sensitive, less capable of handling disappointment. I told myself that my parents loved us equally. They just showed it differently. I told myself a lot of things to make it through those years. The one thing I never told myself was that they would steal from me. My grandmother, my father's mother, was the only person in my family who ever really saw me. She died when I was 12, but before she passed, she set up a college fund in my name. She told me about it on my 10th birthday, sitting in her garden while Brooke played inside with our parents. "This is for you, Elise," she said, pressing a piece of paper into my hands. It was a printout from the bank, showing an account with my name on it. Not for Brooke, not for your parents, for you, for your future. I asked her why she didn't make one for Brooke too, and she smiled sadly. "Your sister will be fine," she said. "Your parents will make sure of that. But you, my darling, you're going to have to make your own way. And I want to make sure you have the chance to do it." I didn't understand what she meant then. I do now. My grandmother started that fund with $50,000. Over the next 8 years, it grew with interest and additional deposits she had arranged before her death. By the time I was 18, it was worth $112,000. $112,000. Enough for 4 years at a good state university. Enough to give me a real start in life. Enough to prove that at least one person in my family believed I was worth investing in. I never saw a penny of it. The summer before my senior year of high school, everything was on track. I had a 4.2 GPA, excellent SAT scores, and a stack of college brochures on my desk. I was planning to study business, maybe finance. I wanted to understand money, how it worked, how to make it grow. I wanted to never feel powerless again. Brooke, meanwhile, had just finished her freshman year of high school with a 2.3 GPA and a new boyfriend named Tyler who drove a motorcycle and smelled like cigarettes. My parents were worried about her. They were always worried about her. They said she was going through a phase, that she just needed more support, more attention, more of everything. I should have seen it coming. The conversation happened on a Tuesday evening in August. I remember because I had just gotten home from my summer job at the local library, where I shelved books for minimum wage and saved every dollar for college expenses my fund would cover. My parents were sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in, and something about their posture made me stop in the doorway. "Elise," my mother said, "sit down. We need to talk." I sat. My father cleared his throat, the way he always did when he was about to say something he knew I wouldn't like. He did that a lot with me, never with Brooke. "There's been a change," he said, "with your college fund." I felt my heart rate spike, but I kept my face calm. I had learned early that showing emotion in my family just made things worse. "What kind of change?" My mother reached across the table like she was going to take my hand, then stopped. "Your sister is struggling, Elise. You know that. Her grades, her choices, the crowd she's running with. We're terrified we're going to lose her." I waited. I knew there was more coming. There was always more coming. "We've decided," my father said, "that the best thing for Brooke would be to send her to Westbrook Academy for her last 3 years of high school. It's a boarding school in Vermont. Excellent academics, structured environment, very prestigious." I knew Westbrook. It was one of the most expensive private schools on the East Coast. Tuition alone was $40,000 a year. "That sounds like a good idea," I said carefully. "How are you going to pay for it?" They exchanged a look, the kind of look that told me they had rehearsed this conversation, that they had already made their decision, that nothing I said would change it. "We've decided to use your college fund," my mother said, "the one your grandmother left." The world went silent. I could see my mother's lips moving, could see my father nodding along, but I couldn't hear anything. Just a high-pitched ringing, like the sound a glass makes right before it shatters. "My fund," I finally managed. "The one Grandma left for me specifically." "We know this is hard," my father said, "but you're strong, Elise. You've always been strong. You can get scholarships, take out loans, you'll figure it out." "But Brooke, she's struggling, she's sinking, she needs this now." And there it was, the fundamental truth of my family, spoken out loud for the first time. I was strong, so I didn't need help. Brooke was struggling, so she got everything. I sat there for a long moment, feeling something cold settle in my chest. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something deeper, something quieter. It was the realization that I had never mattered to them. Not really, not the way Brooke did. "Did you even consider asking me?" I asked. My mother's face hardened. "We're not asking, Elise. We're telling you. This is what's best for the family. For the family, not for me. For the family that had never included me. Not really." "What about what Grandma wanted?" I pressed. "She set that money aside for my education. She told me it was mine." "Your grandmother isn't here anymore," my father said, and his voice had an edge to it now. "We're your parents, and we're making the decision we think is right." I could have fought. I could have screamed, cried, threatened to call a lawyer. Looking back, maybe I should have. But I was 18 years old, and I had spent my entire life being taught that my needs came last. I didn't have the words or the weapons to fight back, so I just nodded. "Okay," I said, "if that's what you've decided." My mother's face relaxed into something like relief. "I knew you'd understand," she said. "You've always been the reasonable one." I stood up from the table. "I need to go finish some applications." I walked to my room, closed the door, and sat on my bed in the dark for 3 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, feeling the future I had planned crumble into dust around me. The next morning, I started making a new plan. What my parents didn't know, what they never bothered to find out, was that I had already been accepted to 4 universities. 2 of them had offered me partial scholarships based on my academic record, but without my college fund, even the scholarships weren't enough. I would have needed to take out nearly $80,000 in loans just to cover the gaps. $80,000 at 18 years old, with no family safety net, no backup plan, no one to catch me if I fell. It wasn't impossible, but it was terrifying, and I was tired of being terrified. So I made a different choice. Instead of going to a 4-year university, I enrolled in a community college nearby and got a job at a real estate office as a receptionist. The pay was terrible, $11 an hour, but the education was priceless. I watched and I listened, and I learned how money really worked, not from textbooks, but from watching people buy and sell and negotiate and win. I got my real estate license at 19, sold my first house at 20, By 22, I was the top selling agent at my firm, and I was saving every penny I made. Meanwhile, Brooke was at Westbrook Academy, struggling just as much as she had at home. She got caught cheating on an exam her sophomore year, nearly got expelled for sneaking out with some boy junior year, graduated by the skin of her teeth with a 2.4 GPA. My parents paid $120,000 for those 3 years, my $112,000, plus everything else they had saved. And at the end of it, Brooke had no skills, no direction, and no idea what to do with her life. But at least she wasn't my problem anymore. The day I turned 18, I had promised myself that I would never ask my family for anything again. And I kept that promise. I moved out as soon as I could afford to, a tiny apartment on the other side of town where the rent was cheap and the neighbors were loud. My parents called me ungrateful when I left. My mother said I was punishing them for making a hard decision. My father said I was being dramatic. I just said I needed my own space. The truth was, I couldn't stand to be in that house anymore. Every time I walked through the door, I was reminded of what they had taken from me. Not just the money, the belief that I was worth investing in, the faith that my family would support me when it mattered. They had stolen something far more valuable than $112,000. They had stolen my trust. And I was going to spend the next decade building something from the ashes. Before I tell you about how I built my fortune, about the years of 18-hour days and calculated risks and moments when I almost lost everything, I want to pause for a second. If you're watching this and any of it resonates with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the one who had to figure it out while someone else got all the support, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from people who understand what it feels like to build yourself up from nothing. Now, let me tell you how I went from an $11 an hour receptionist to the woman who bought an entire street. Real estate wasn't my passion. It was my education. Every house I sold taught me something new. About value, about negotiation, about how to spot opportunity where other people saw problems. By the time I was 23, I had saved enough to buy my first investment property, a rundown duplex in a neighborhood everyone said was dying. I saw something different. I saw a neighborhood that was undervalued, full of working-class families who just needed someone to believe in them. I bought that duplex for $80,000, renovated it myself over 6 months of weekends and evenings, and rented out both units. The monthly income covered the mortgage, with enough left over to start saving for the next property. 2 years later, I bought another one, then another, then another. I wasn't just buying properties, I was buying my freedom. By 25, I had 7 rental units generating passive income. By 27, I had 15. I quit my job at the real estate office and started my own property management company. Then I started flipping houses, buying distressed properties at auction, renovating them, and selling them for a profit. Every dollar I made, I reinvested. Every lesson I learned, I applied. Every obstacle I faced, I overcame. I'm not going to pretend it was easy. There were years when I barely slept, when I ate ramen for dinner and worked through weekends and holidays. There were deals that fell through, contractors who cheated me, tenants who destroyed my properties and disappeared without paying rent. But I never gave up, because every time I wanted to quit, I remembered sitting at that kitchen table listening to my parents tell me I was strong enough to figure it out while they handed my future to my sister on a silver platter. They were right about one thing. I was strong enough, just not in the way they expected. While I was building an empire, Brooke was still struggling. She bounced between jobs, between boyfriends, between states. She moved back home at 23 after her latest relationship imploded. Never left. My parents continued to support her, of course. They paid for her car, her insurance, her credit card bills when she maxed them out. They told themselves they were helping. What they were actually doing was ensuring she never learned to stand on her own defeat. I watched from a distance, too busy building my own life to get involved. We talked occasionally. Holidays and birthdays, the obligatory family appearances. My parents never asked about my career, never showed interest in what I was building. They assumed I was still selling houses, still working for someone else, still exactly where they had left me. They had no idea who I had become. That changed 10 years after they gave away my college fund, when I walked into a commercial real estate auction in my hometown and bought every available property on Maple Ridge Lane. 17 properties in total. 12 single-family homes, 3 duplexes, and 2 vacant lots at the end of the street, including the house I grew up in, including the houses of every neighbor who had watched me leave home at 18 with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. The auctioneer looked at me like I was insane. The other bidders stopped competing once they realized I was prepared to pay whatever it took. The whole thing was over in an hour. When I walked out of that auction house with the deeds in my hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of something stronger. The knowledge that I had turned my worst moment into my greatest triumph. But I wasn't done yet. The auction was just the beginning. The real confrontation was still to come. I didn't go to Maple Ridge Lane right away. I waited. I needed time to figure out exactly what I wanted to say, exactly how I wanted this to unfold. Revenge, I had learned, was a dish best served strategically. My first step was to hire a property management company to send letters to all the tenants, introducing myself as the new owner. Nothing alarming, just a formal notification of the change in ownership. For the tenants who were renting, I actually lowered their monthly payments slightly. I wasn't interested in punishing innocent people. I was interested in something far more specific. For my parents, who owned their home outright, the situation was different. They owned their house, but they didn't own the land it sat on. That was a quirk of the original development, one that most homeowners on the street had never paid attention to. The previous developer had sold the houses separately from the land leases, which renewed every 30 years. Those leases had just come up for renewal, and now I was the one who controlled them. I sent my parents a formal letter from my attorney, informing them that the land lease for their property was being restructured under new ownership. The letter didn't mention my name, just the name of my holding company, Ridge Development LLC. I knew exactly what would happen when they received it. They would panic, call around, try to figure out who this mysterious new owner was. They would ask the neighbors, check the public records, maybe even hire a lawyer. And eventually, inevitably, they would find out it was me. I just wanted them to sweat a little first. The phone call came 3 weeks after the letters went out. I was in my home office, reviewing plans for a new development project, when my personal cell phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in months. My mother. I let it ring for times before I answered. Hello, Elise. My mother's voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. We just found out something very disturbing. Oh, I kept my voice casual, almost bored. What's that? The new owner of our land lease. Do you know who it is? I waited a beat. I do. It's you. She spat the words like an accusation. You bought our street. You bought the land under our house. What are you doing, Elise? What is this? I set down my pen and leaned back in my chair. It's an investment, Mom. Real estate is what I do. Don't give me that. Her voice was rising now. I know what this is. This is you punishing us. After everything we've done for you, after raising you, providing for you, this is how you repay us. I felt something cold move through me. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. The kind of clarity you get when you finally see someone for exactly who they are. Everything you've done for me, I repeated slowly. Mom, do you remember what you did when I was 18? Silence. Do you remember sitting me down at the kitchen table and telling me you were taking my college fund? The money Grandma left specifically for me? Do you remember telling me I was strong enough to figure it out? While you spend $112,000 sending Brooke to private school? That was different, she said, but her voice had lost some of its force. Brooke needed that school. She was struggling. And I wasn't struggling? I asked. I was 18 years old, Mom. I had plans, dreams, a future I had been working toward for years. And you took it all away because Brooke needed it more. Because Brooke always needed it more. You got scholarships, my mother said weakly. You did fine. I got a partial scholarship. That wasn't enough. Without the fund you stole. I worked full-time while going to community college. I spent years building a career from nothing while you and Dad continued to hand Brooke everything she asked for. And you know what the worst part is? She didn't answer. The worst part is that you never even apologized. Not once. You told yourselves you made the right decision. And you never looked back. You never wondered what it cost me, what I had to sacrifice, what I had to become to survive what you did. I took a breath, steadying myself. So, yes, Mom, I bought your street. I bought the land under your house. And I did it because I wanted you to feel, just for a moment, what it's like to have your security taken away by someone who was supposed to protect you. There was a long pause. When my mother spoke again, Her voice was small. "What are you going to do?" "I haven't decided yet," I said. "But I wanted you to know who's making that decision now. It's not you, and it's not Dad, it's me. And for the first time in my life, that actually means something." I hung up before she could respond. The family meeting happened the following week, not because I wanted it, but because my father insisted. He sent a formal email, the first direct communication I'd had from him in years, requesting that we all sit down together and discuss this situation like adults. Like adults. As if they had ever treated me like one. I agreed to the meeting, but I set the terms. It would happen at a neutral location, a conference room I rented in a downtown office building. I would bring my attorney. They could bring theirs if they wished. They didn't bring an attorney. They brought Brooke. She looked older than I remembered, which made sense. 10 years will do that. But there was something else different about her, a weariness in her eyes that I didn't expect. She wasn't the golden child anymore. She was just a 30-year-old woman who had never figured out how to stand on her own. I felt a flash of something that might have been pity, but I pushed it aside. This wasn't about Brooke. Not really. It was about the parents who had created her, the ones who had taught her that she never had to work for anything because someone else would always provide. We sat on opposite sides of the conference table, my attorney beside me, my family across from me. My father looked angry. My mother looked scared. Brooke looked confused, like she still didn't quite understand what was happening or why. "Let's just get this over with," my father said. "What do you want, Elise? Money? An apology? What's it going to take to make this go away?" I studied him for a moment, this man who had raised me but never really known me. He was older now, grayer, but he still had that same dismissive look in his eyes, the one that said I was a problem to be solved, not a person to be understood. "I don't want your money," I said calmly, "and an apology now would be meaningless. You'd only be saying what you thought I wanted to hear." "Then what?" His patience was thinning. "Why did you buy our street? Why did you do all this?" "Because I could." The words hung in the air between us. "Because 10 years ago, I was an 18-year-old girl with a dream and a plan and a college fund that was supposed to make it all possible. And you took it away like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. You didn't even hesitate. You just decided that Brooke's needs mattered more than my future, and you expected me to accept it." Brooke shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I didn't ask them to do that," she said quietly. "I didn't even know about it until later." "I believe you," I said, and I meant it. "This isn't about you, Brooke. You were 15. You didn't make this decision. They did." I turned back to my parents. I built everything I have from nothing. No help. No safety net. No family support. I worked 80-hour weeks. I took risks that kept me up at night. I sacrificed relationships and experiences and years of my life. And I did it all because you taught me something valuable that summer. You taught me that I could only count on myself. So thank you." They stared at me, clearly not expecting gratitude. "Thank you for showing me who I really was to this family. Thank you for forcing me to become someone who didn't need your approval or your support. Thank you for making me strong enough to buy this entire street and sit across from you as an equal instead of the invisible child you always wanted me to be." My mother's eyes were wet. "Elise, we never meant to hurt you. We were just trying to help your sister." "And you did," I said. "You helped Brooke by sacrificing me. That was your choice. I'm not asking you to take it back. I'm not asking for anything at all. I'm just telling you that choices have consequences, and this is yours." "So you're going to what?" my father demanded. "Kick us out of our home? After 40 years? I shook my head slowly. "No, that's not what this is about." I opened the folder in front of me and pulled out a document, sliding it across the table. "This is a new land lease agreement. It's fair, reasonable, even generous. I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to show you that I could if I wanted to. That you are living in a house that exists at my discretion. That the daughter you overlooked for 30 years now holds your future in her hands." They stared at the document without touching it. "Sign it or don't," I said. "The terms are the same either way. But I want you to understand something. I want you to really, truly understand it." I leaned forward slightly. "I won. Not because I bought your street or because I'm richer than you ever imagined. I won because I became someone you never thought I could be. I won because I built a life that doesn't need your approval or your love. I won because I'm sitting here, completely at peace, and you're the ones who are scared." Before I continue with what happened next, I need to take a moment. If this story is hitting close to home for you, if you've ever been the overlooked one, the reliable one, The one who was supposed to just figure it out while everyone else got support. I want you to type invisible in the comments. Let me know I'm not alone in this. And if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button. It really helps. Now, let me tell you what happened after that meeting. The weeks following the family meeting were strange, quiet. I had expected more drama, more phone calls, more attempts to change my mind or guilt me into backing down. Instead, there was silence. My parents signed the lease agreement. They didn't negotiate, didn't argue, didn't even acknowledge the terms beyond a brief email from my father confirming receipt. It was like they had finally accepted that they had lost control of the narrative. For the first time in my life, they had nothing to hold over me. I should have felt triumphant, and in some ways I did. But there was also an emptiness to it, a realization that winning this battle hadn't actually healed anything. The wounds were still there, just older now, scarred over but not gone. I threw myself back into work. The development projects I had been planning moved forward. The rental properties continued generating income. My company expanded, hired new employees, took on bigger and more ambitious deals. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Inside, I was still processing what it meant to have gotten everything I wanted and still feel incomplete. Then, 6 months after the family meeting, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Elise?" The voice was hesitant, uncertain. "It's Brooke." I almost hung up. The instinct was automatic, a decade of self-protection kicking in. But something in her voice made me pause. She sounded different, smaller somehow, less like the golden child and more like someone who had finally woken up from a long sleep. "What do you want, Brooke?" "I want to talk," she said. "Not about the house or the money or any of that. I want to understand. I want to know what really happened." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I don't have time for games. This isn't a game, I swear. I've been doing a lot of thinking since that meeting. About our childhood, about how mom and dad treated you, about everything I didn't see because I wasn't paying attention." She paused. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to help me understand." I stared out my office window at the city skyline, the empire I had built from nothing. I could have said no, I probably should have. But something in her voice reminded me of myself at 18, trying to make sense of a world that didn't make sense anymore. "Fine," I said. "One conversation. That's all I'm offering." "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you, Elise." We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. Brooke was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked tired. Not the fashionable kind of tired, the real kind, the kind that comes from finally facing truths you spent years avoiding. I slid into the seat across from her. "I have an hour." She nodded, taking a shaky breath. "I've been thinking about what you said at the meeting. About how mom and dad sacrificed you for me. About how I got everything and you got nothing." I waited. "I didn't know," she continued. "I know that sounds like a cop-out, but I really didn't know. I was 15 when they took your college fund. I didn't even understand what that meant. They just told me I was going to this new school, and I thought it was because they believed in me." She laughed bitterly. "They didn't believe in me. They were trying to fix me, send me somewhere else so I'd become someone else's problem." I studied her face. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm 30 years old and I still live with our parents." She looked away. "I've never held a job for more than a year. I've never been in a relationship that lasted more than 2. I have no savings, no skills, no idea who I am or what I want." I softened slightly. "That's not entirely your fault." "But it's partly my fault," she insisted. "I could have pushed back. I could have worked harder, demanded less, tried to be more like you. Instead, I just took what they gave me and assumed I deserved it." She met my eyes. "You were always the strong one, Elise. I used to hate you for it. I thought you were cold, that you didn't need love the way I did. But that wasn't it, was it? You needed it just as much. You just learned to survive without it." Something in my chest cracked open slightly. "Yes," I said quietly. "That's exactly what happened. I'm sorry." The words were simple, but they carried weight. "I'm so sorry for everything you went through, for not seeing it, for not standing up for you, for being the reason they hurt you." "You weren't the reason," I corrected. "They made their choice. You were just the excuse." She nodded slowly. "I know, but I'm still sorry." We sat in silence for a long moment. The coffee shop hummed around us, customers coming and going, lives intersecting and separating. I felt something shift between us, some wall that had stood for years beginning to show cracks. What do you want, Brooke? I finally asked. Really, what do you want from this conversation? She took a deep breath. I want a chance to know you. Not as the sister I competed with, but as the person you actually are. I want to understand how you built all of this. She gestured vaguely. I want to learn. Learn what? How to be strong like you. How to build something of my own. How to stop being the person they made me and start being someone I actually respect. I leaned back, considering. That's not something I can teach you in an afternoon. I know, but maybe you could show me where to start? I should have said no. Every instinct I had, honed over a decade of self-reliance, told me that getting close to anyone from my family was a risk I couldn't afford. Brooke had been their weapon for years, even if she hadn't known it. Trusting her felt like walking into a trap. But when I looked at her, I didn't see the golden child anymore. I saw a woman who had been just as damaged by our parents as I had, just in different ways. She had been given everything, and it had left her with nothing. I had been given nothing, and it had forced me to become everything. Maybe there was a middle ground somewhere. Maybe we could find it together. I'll think about it, I said finally. That's all I can promise right now. She nodded, relief flooding her face. That's enough. That's more than I expected. I stood to leave, then paused. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Mom and Dad. I don't know if I should. But you, I don't want to spend the rest of my life being angry at the person they turned you into. If you're really willing to change, I'm willing to give you a chance. I am. Her voice was fierce. I swear I am. We'll see. I walked out of the coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because everything was fixed, because it wasn't, but because for the first time, I could imagine a future where my family wasn't just a source of pain, where at least one person from my past could become part of my present. It was a small hope, but small hopes were where everything began. The next year was a time of slow, careful rebuilding. Brooke and I met regularly, first once a month, then twice, then weekly. She got a job as a receptionist at a marketing firm, entry level, nothing glamorous, but she showed up every day and did the work. I helped her open a savings account and set up automatic transfers, small amounts at first, but consistent. She moved out of our parents' house 3 months after our first coffee shop conversation. Her apartment was tiny, barely bigger than the one I had rented when I first left home, but she was proud of it. She sent me pictures when she bought her first piece of furniture with money she had earned herself. Our parents didn't understand what was happening. They called Brooke constantly, trying to guilt her into coming back, telling her she wasn't ready to be on her own. They called me too, sometimes, leaving voicemails I rarely listened to. Their tone had shifted from demanding to pleading, but I still heard the same entitlement underneath. They still believed I owed them something. They still couldn't understand that the debt had been paid a long time ago, and not by me. I spent that year focusing on my work, on my growing relationship with Brooke, and on something I hadn't allowed myself to think about for a long time, my own happiness. For so many years, success had been my goal, building wealth, proving my worth, becoming someone my parents couldn't ignore. But now that I had achieved all of that, I realized it wasn't enough. Success without joy was just another form of emptiness. I started therapy. I started dating again. I started taking weekends off, something I hadn't done in years. I bought a house, not an investment property, but a home, a place that was just for me, with a garden where I could sit in the evenings and remember my grandmother's words. Your sister will be fine. Your parents will make sure of that. But you, my darling, you're going to have to make your own way. I had made my way, and now, finally, I was learning to enjoy the journey. The final conversation with my parents happened almost 2 years after I bought Maple Ridge Lane. They asked to meet me at their house, the house that now sat on land I owned. I agreed, curious what they could possibly have left to say. They were older now, visibly aged in ways that surprised me. My father walked with a slight limp. My mother's hair had gone completely gray. They looked tired, defeated, nothing like the confident, dismissive parents I remembered from childhood. We sat in the living room where I had spent so many years, feeling invisible. The furniture was the same, the pictures on the wall were the same, but everything felt different, smaller somehow, less intimidating. Thank you for coming, my mother said quietly. We know we don't deserve your time. I didn't respond. I just waited. My father cleared his throat, that familiar gesture. But there was no edge to it now, just exhaustion. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," he said. "About you. About Brooke. About the choices we made. It took us a long time to see it, but we finally understand what we did to you." I still didn't speak. I had learned that silence was often more powerful than words. My mother's eyes were wet. "We favored Brooke. We always did. We told ourselves we were helping her, but we were really just neglecting you. And when we took your college fund," she stopped, her voice breaking, "we didn't even consider what it would mean for you. We just assumed you'd figure it out because you always did. Because you made me," I said quietly. "I know," she wiped her eyes. "We made you responsible for everything, including your own survival. And then we acted like you owed us gratitude for raising you, when really, you raised yourself." My father spoke again. "We're not asking for forgiveness. We know we don't deserve it. But we wanted you to know that we see it now. We see what we did, and we're sorry." I sat with their words for a long moment, feeling the weight of them. 2 years ago, this apology would have meant everything. I had spent my whole life waiting for them to see me, to acknowledge what they had done. Now that it was finally happening, I wasn't sure what to do with it. "I appreciate you saying that," I finally said. "It means something that you can admit it. But you're not going to forgive us," my mother said. It wasn't a question. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Forgiveness is a process. It's not something I can decide in an afternoon." They nodded, accepting this. "I want to tell you something," I continued. "When I bought this street, when I called you from that conference room and told you I had won, I thought it would feel like victory. I thought finally having power over you would heal everything that was broken. It didn't," my father said quietly. "No, it didn't." I looked around the room. This house full of memories, both painful and precious. Power isn't healing, it's just power. What healed me was building a life that didn't depend on you. What healed me was finding people who valued me for who I am, not for what I could give them. What healed me was learning that your approval was never the point. I stood up. "I'm not selling you the land lease. I'm not kicking you out. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life punishing you for what you did. That would make me just as trapped as I was before." I paused at the doorway. "But I'm also not going to pretend everything is fine. We're not going to have Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings and play happy family. You lost that chance a long time ago. What we have now is this: a polite distance, a recognition of what happened, and maybe eventually, something that looks like peace." My mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. "That's more than we deserve." "Yes," I agreed. "It is." I left the house and walked to my car, feeling the weight of 32 years lifting slowly from my shoulders. Not all at once, not completely, but enough to breathe freely for the first time in my life. If you've made it this far, I want to leave you with something. Not advice exactly, just what I learned from this experience. For years, I believed that success was the best revenge. That if I could just become rich enough, powerful enough, impressive enough, my parents would finally see my value. They would regret what they did and beg for my forgiveness, and I would finally feel complete. It doesn't work that way. Success is wonderful. Financial security is wonderful. Building something from nothing and proving everyone wrong is wonderful. But none of it heals the wounds that other people inflicted on you. Only you can do that. Only time and therapy and honest self-reflection can do that. My parents gave my college fund to my sister, and I spent the next decade trying to prove them wrong. But the truth is, they were never going to see my worth, no matter how much I achieved. Their blindness wasn't about me. It was about them, their limitations, their fears, their inability to love equally. What finally set me free wasn't buying their street or sitting across from them in a power position. What set me free was accepting that some people will never give you what you need, and building a life that doesn't require it. If you're waiting for someone to finally see your value, to apologize, to change, let me offer you this: stop waiting. You might get that apology someday. You might not. Either way, your life is too precious to spend on hold. Build your empire. Create your joy. Find your people. And let the ones who couldn't love you properly watch from a distance while you become everything they said you couldn't be. That's not revenge. That's freedom. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. And if you have a story of your own, about overcoming family dysfunction, about building yourself up from nothing, about finally breaking free, please share it in the comments. I read every single one, and I love hearing from people who understand this journey. There's another video you should watch next, link below, about what happens when you finally stop seeking approval from people who will never give it. I think you'll find it powerful. Until then, take care of yourself. You deserve it. You always did.